There comes a moment in every person's life where the word yes feels easier, safer, more polite. We agree to things we do not truly want, we accept burdens we cannot carry, and we bend ourselves into shapes that are unsustainable, all because we fear the discomfort of saying no. Yet, if you trace the consequences of this pattern over time, you will see that a life lived without the courage to dot light. Say no becomes a life ruled not by your own values, but by the demands and expectations of others. It is the silent erosion of personal freedom. Learning to say no is not about becoming selfish or dismissive. It is about preserving the integrity of your time, your energy, and your soul. At first glance, no looks like a small word, almost insignificant compared to the towering structures of our daily responsibilities. But within it lies a profound power because it represents a boundary. A person without boundaries is like a house without walls, open to intrusion, vulnerable to collapse, with no space to call their own. When you cannot say no, you invite the world to trample over your values and priorities. And while this may feel noble at first, because you appear helpful, agreeable, and generous, it eventually transforms into resentment, exhaustion, and even self-betrayal. Consider how many people say yes because they are afraid of rejection. A friend asks for a favor that stretches you thin, and you agree because you fear they will think less of you if you refuse. A colleague piles extra work on your shoulders, and you accept because you don't want to appear uncooperative. A family member demands your time, and you comply because you feel guilty prioritizing yourself. So, in all these cases, yes becomes a mask worn to keep the peace, while inside you suffer quietly. What most fail to realize is that in the long run, this false yes does not preserve relationships. It poisons them. It breeds bitterness because the act of constant compliance strips you of authenticity. And a relationship built on inauthenticity cannot survive with genuine trust. To say no requires courage, but courage is born from clarity. You must first understand what you value and what you refuse to compromise. If you do not know your priorities, you will always be vulnerable to someone else's. Imagine a person who values their health yet agrees to every late-night outing, every indulgent temptation simply because they fear being called boring. Their health slowly deteriorates not because of a lack of discipline, but because of a lack of no. Or think of someone whose deepest desire is to build a creative career, yet they constantly agree to commitments that drain their time and energy. Years pass and their dream remains unrealized, sacrificed on the altar of other people's requests. In both cases, the absence of no kills not only opportunities, but the very essence of who the person could have been. The practice of saying no is a skill, and like all skills, it requires training. The first step is to detach no from guilt. Many of us equate refusal with cruelty, as if denying someone's request is an attack on their worth. But this is a distortion. A refusal is not a rejection of the person, it is a recognition of your limits. Limits are not flaws, they are necessary conditions of existence. Just as a tree cannot grow without the boundary of its bark, you cannot thrive without the protective barrier of your no. When you begin to practice it, the discomfort will be sharp. You will feel the urge to justify, to apologize excessively, to soften your words until they lose meaning. But over time, you will discover that people respect those who have clear boundaries. A person who always says yes eventually becomes invisible because their presence is taken for granted. But the one who says no wisely is noticed, valued, and trusted, because their yes then carries weight. It is no longer a hollow gesture, it is a deliberate gift. Think of the psychological freedom this brings. When you can say no to what does not serve you, you reclaim the ability to say yes wholeheartedly to what truly matters. You protect your time for the pursuits that nourish you, whether that is your work, your family, or your inner growth. You create space for silence, for reflection, for creativity. Most importantly, you affirm to yourself that your life is your own. No one else has the right to dictate how you spend it unless you willingly allow them. Saying no also strengthens character because it forces you to endure the temporary discomfort of disapproval. The truth is, people may not always like your boundaries. Some will try to guilt you, manipulate you, or accuse you of selfishness. But each time you stand firm, you teach yourself resilience. You learn that your worth is not dependent on being universally liked, but on living truthfully. And in the end, the relationships that matter will endure your no, while the ones that crumble were never truly built on respect to begin with. The greatest irony is that by saying no more often, you actually become more generous. When you stop scattering your energy on meaningless obligations, you gain the strength to give fully where it counts. Your yes becomes authentic, your presence undivided. Instead of being stretched thin across 100 half-hearted commitments, you offer yourself wholly to the few that align with your soul. This is not selfishness, this is wisdom. It is the difference between burning out and burning brightly. There is, however, an art to the way no is spoken. It does not need to be harsh, nor does it require hostility. A firm, respectful no communicates clarity without aggression. You can decline with kindness, but you must decline nonetheless. And once you do, resist the temptation to over-explain. The moment you feel you must justify your refusal excessively, you hand back the power you just claimed. A simple, honest, I can't commit to that right now is often more than enough. Life is finite. Time is finite, energy is finite. Every yes you utter is a trade, and the currency you spend is your existence. If you say yes without discernment, you risk bankrupting yourself in service of things that do not matter. But if you master the discipline of no, you invest your life wisely. You preserve your vitality for what truly gives meaning, and in doing so, you honor not only yourself, but also those who depend on the best version of you. Learning to say no is ultimately learning to live authentically. It is the refusal to be ruled by fear, guilt, or the endless demands of others. It is the quiet but powerful declaration that your life is not a canvas for someone else's painting, but a work of art that only you can create. And every time you say no to what diminishes you, you are in fact saying yes to the possibility of becoming who you were meant to be.